The invisible warning signs. Why most people miss them. Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling uneasy, like something was off, but you couldn't quite explain why? Maybe the words sounded normal, even polite, but something about the tone, the phrasing, or the subtle undertones left you questioning yourself. That's the danger of psychological red flags. They're often silent alarms. Not loud, not obvious, but whispering warnings that most of us ignore. And why do we ignore them? Because our minds are wired for connection. We crave approval. We want to belong. So when a conversation feels wrong, we push that intuition aside to avoid conflict, telling ourselves, maybe I'm overreacting. But here's the truth. Those little alarms? They're your inner defense system. And when you miss them, you invite manipulation, toxic dynamics, and emotional exhaustion into your life. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." What does that mean here? It means you must trust yourself, even when others make you feel wrong for noticing they're wrong. The courage to trust your instincts, even at the cost of being misunderstood, is what separates the strong from the easily controlled. Think about it. Every toxic relationship, every draining friendship, every manipulative work environment starts the same way, with small signs ignored. The harmless joke that wasn't so harmless. The compliment that felt like a dig. The constant interruption disguised as excitement. Psychological red flags are the first cracks in the wall. And when you don't see them, you end up trapped inside someone else's game. Here's why this matters for you. If you can spot these signs early, you take back control of your mental space. You stop being someone's emotional playground. And most importantly, you walk through life with the kind of unshakable calm that Stoics admired. Not because you never face manipulation, but because you know how to dismantle it before it grows roots. In this video, I'm going to reveal the 14 psychological red flags and conversations you must never ignore, and more importantly, how Stoic wisdom can help you respond. Not with anger, not with weakness, but with strength and clarity. Let's start with one of the most common red flags you probably miss every single day. Constant one-upping, the subtle power play you overlook. You're in a conversation, sharing something personal, maybe a small win, a funny story, or even a challenge you're facing. Before you can even finish, the other person jumps in with, "Oh, that's nothing. You should hear what happened to me." And suddenly, the spotlight shifts. Your moment? Gone. This is called one-upping, and it's one of the most overlooked psychological red flags. Why? Because on the surface, it looks harmless, just someone sharing their experience. But dig deeper, and you'll find a subtle power play. When someone constantly one-ups you, what they're really saying is, your experience isn't enough. Mine matters more. Over time, this dynamic chips away at your confidence. You start feeling like your stories aren't worth telling, your achievements aren't big enough, your struggles don't count. And slowly, without realizing it, you shrink. The Stoics warned about this. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." One-uppers do the opposite. Instead of listening, they compete for moral or social superiority. They don't seek understanding, they seek dominance. Here's why this matters. When conversations turn into silent competitions, connection dies. And the saddest part? Many people stay in these dynamics for years because they think it's normal. They tell themselves, "That's just how he is," or "She means well." But you know what? Genuine connection doesn't make you feel small. It makes you feel seen. So, how do you handle one-uppers? The Stoic response is simple. Detach from the ego game. Don't take the bait. You don't need to prove yourself or compete in the endless who had it worse or better contest. Instead, respond calmly with something like, "That's interesting. Thanks for sharing." Then redirect the conversation, or, if this is a pattern, create distance. Because if every interaction feels like a battle, you're not in a friendship. You're in a competition you never signed up for. Here's the takeaway. When someone constantly needs to be bigger than you in every conversation, it's not about you. It's about their insecurity. But if you ignore this red flag, You'll spend years trying to win validation in a game designed for you to lose. Next, let's talk about a trick that feels like a compliment, but is actually a dagger. Backhanded compliments. Praise disguised as poison. Imagine this. You've put effort into your appearance. Maybe you got a new haircut, a fresh outfit, and you feel good about yourself. Then someone smiles and says, "Wow, you look great today. I mean, compared to how you usually look." Ouch. That's a backhanded compliment, a psychological red flag wrapped in fake kindness. Why do people do this? Because it's a control tactic. By giving you praise and insult at the same time, they keep you off balance. You're not sure whether to feel flattered or hurt. So what do? You chase their approval harder. You try to earn the full compliment next time. And that's exactly the trap. Stoic wisdom saw through this centuries ago. Epictetus said, "If someone speaks badly of you, defend yourself, but only if it's true." The Stoic point? Don't waste your peace on someone else's warped judgment. Here's what backhanded compliments reveal. They're not about lifting you up. They're about placing themselves above you. By making you doubt your worth, they create a hierarchy where they hold the power. But here's the real danger. Backhanded compliments often come from people close to you, friends, family, even colleagues. And because they're mixed with nice words, you question yourself instead of them. You start thinking, am I being too sensitive? Maybe they meant well. This self-doubt is the first step toward emotional manipulation. So how do you respond? The Stoic approach is calm clarity. Recognize the intent without reacting emotionally. Respond with neutrality, not defensiveness. Example. That's an interesting way to put it. Then move on. No drama. No giving them the satisfaction of seeing you rattled. Here's the truth. Healthy people don't mix praise with poison. Genuine compliments don't leave scars. If you constantly feel conflicted after someone compliments you, that's a signal to reevaluate the relationship. And remember this. When you stop rewarding mixed signals with extra effort, you reclaim your power. You stop dancing for crumbs of validation. Up next, we dive into a tactic that makes you question your own reality. The most dangerous red flag of all. Gaslighting. When words twist your reality. Picture this. You clearly remember what was said in a conversation. It's vivid. You were there. You heard it. Later, you bring it up, and the person looks at you calmly and says, "That never happened." You're imagining things. At first, you laugh it off. Maybe you misheard. Maybe you overreacted. But then it happens again and again, until one day, you're questioning your own memory, your own judgment, your own sanity. This is gaslighting, one of the most dangerous psychological red flags because it doesn't just manipulate your feelings, it rewrites your reality. Gaslighting often starts subtly. You're being too sensitive. That's not what I said. Everyone thinks you're overreacting. Each time, the goal is the same, to make you doubt yourself so they can gain control. And once you doubt your perception, you start depending on the gaslighter to define reality for you. The Stoics understood this danger long before the term existed. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Gaslighters weaponize this truth. They plant seeds of doubt so that you suffer more in your mind than from actual events. Why is this so damaging? Because self-trust is the foundation of mental stability. When someone erodes that trust, they control not just the conversation, but your entire worldview. Here's how to spot it. When every disagreement turns into "you're crazy" or "you misremembered," when the person refuses to acknowledge clear evidence, when you feel like you need to record conversations just to prove you're not losing it. How do you fight back? The Stoic response. Anchor yourself to objective truth. Keep a journal. Document conversations and events. When doubt creeps in, look at the facts, not their narrative. Most importantly, don't engage in endless defense. You don't need to convince a gaslighter. They don't want the truth. They want control. Here's the mental shift. If someone repeatedly makes you feel like your mind is broken, it's not your mind that's broken. It's the relationship. Gaslighting is psychological warfare, and the only way to win is to stop playing their game. Next, we'll uncover a tactic that hides behind constant jokes but leaves deep wounds over time. Constant jokes at your expense when humor becomes a weapon. We all love humor. A good joke can break tension, create connection, and bring light into dark moments. But here's the catch. Not all jokes are harmless. Have you ever been in a group where someone keeps making funny remarks about you? Maybe about your looks, your habits, your intelligence. And when you finally react, they smile and say, "Relax, it was just a joke." But was it really? When humor consistently makes you feel small, it's no longer humor. It's hostility in disguise. This is a psychological red flag because it trains you to accept disrespect as entertainment. You laugh along to avoid looking uptight. You stay silent to keep the peace. Over time, the jokes shape your identity, not in truth, but in perception. The Stoics had a clear stance on ridicule. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." In other words, when someone uses humor as a weapon, don't mirror their cruelty. Stay grounded in your dignity. But here's why these jokes are so dangerous. They're designed to be unquestionable. If you call them out, you're too sensitive. If you laugh, you silently agree. Either way, the person wins unless you break the cycle. Here's what repeated jokes at your expense reveal. They normalize disrespect. They lower your self-esteem without direct confrontation. They give the person social power by making you the punchline. What can you do? Name the pattern without hostility. Calmly say, "I've noticed most of your jokes are about me." Why is that? This flips the spotlight back on them. If it continues, withdraw your audience. Stop rewarding the behavior with laughter or engagement. Here's a mindset shift from Stoicism. Your value isn't up for debate in someone else's comedy routine. If someone needs to make you small to feel big, that's their weakness, not your worth. Coming up next, we're going to talk about the subtle art of conversation monopolizers, the ones who talk endlessly, not to connect, but to dominate. The conversation monopolizer, when words become chains. We've all met them, the person who talks and talks and talks. At first, you think, wow, they're confident. But as the minutes stretch into hours, you realize something. This isn't a conversation, it's a takeover. Why is this a psychological red flag? Because communication is meant to be a two-way exchange. When someone dominates the dialogue, it's often a sign they're not interested in connection. They're interested in control. Here's the hidden danger. They decide what matters in the conversation. They dismiss your input by not giving you space to speak. Over time, you start feeling invisible, like your voice doesn't matter. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." The monopolizer violates this principle entirely. Their goal isn't understanding, it's dominance. But why do they do this? Sometimes it's arrogance. Sometimes insecurity. They use words as armor, filling every silence so you can't insert your thoughts or challenge theirs. Here's how to recognize this red flag. You leave the conversation exhausted, not energized. When you speak, they interrupt or redirect the topic back to themselves. You realize you've learned nothing about them that's real, because all you heard were stories meant to impress, not reveal. How do you deal with it? 1. Set conversational boundaries. Politely but firmly interject. "Hold on, I'd like to share my perspective too." 2. If they ignore that, stop rewarding the behavior. Don't keep nodding and smiling as if this is okay. Your silence will be taken as consent. 3. Decide if this is a one-time habit or a core trait. A true friend listens. A controller only talks. Here's the Stoic mindset shift. You are not obligated to be an audience in someone else's performance. Healthy conversations feel like a dance, not a lecture. If someone turns every dialogue into a stage, the red flag isn't just their ego, it's the erosion of your voice. Next, we'll look at a more dangerous tactic, love bombing and flattery traps. How fake compliments can become real manipulation. The flattery trap, when compliments hide chains. Who doesn't like being complimented? It feels good, right? A simple, "You're so amazing," can light up your day. But what happens when compliments feel too much, too fast, too frequent? Welcome to the flattery trap, a psychological red flag so sweet, it's bitter. Here's why it's dangerous. Flattery isn't the same as genuine praise. Genuine praise is specific and rooted in truth. Flattery, on the other hand, is strategic. It's not about making you feel good. It's about making you lower your guard. This is often seen in manipulation tactics like love bombing, especially early in relationships. You hear things like, "I've never met anyone like you. You're perfect. You're the most amazing person I've ever known." At first, it feels flattering. But then, notice what happens next. They use that trust to gain control. Suddenly, their opinions weigh heavier. Their expectations feel unshakable. You start bending to please the person who values you so much. As Seneca warned, he who praises you more than he ought will ultimately blame you more than he ought. That's the cycle of the flattery trap. First, they inflate your ego. Then, they tighten their grip. Finally, when you fail to meet the impossible image they created, they criticize you harshly, and you feel like you've fallen from a great height. How to spot this? Compliments that feel excessive or premature. A sudden rush of intimacy, like they know you better than you know yourself. Flattery paired with hidden demands. How to deal with it? Slow down the dynamic. When someone moves too fast emotionally, take a step back. Test their authenticity. Do they respect your boundaries when you say not yet or no? Remember this Stoic principle. Value yourself by what you are, not by what others call you. If compliments become chains, they're not kindness, they're control. Up next, the oversharer. Why telling you too much, too soon, can be a red flag for manipulation or emotional dumping. The oversharer, when intimacy becomes a weapon. You meet someone new. Within minutes, they're pouring out their life story, deep secrets, painful childhood memories, intimate details. At first, you feel honored. Wow, they trust me already. But pause. Is it really trust or a tactic? This is the red flag of oversharing too soon. It creates a false sense of closeness, tricking you into believing the relationship is deeper than it really is. And here's the hidden danger. Once you feel that bond, you become less likely to question their motives. The Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius said, "Be tolerant with others and strict with yourself." But oversharers flip this wisdom. They expect your tolerance immediately without earning your trust. Why do people do this? Manipulation. They weaponize vulnerability to make you drop your guard. Emotional dumping. They want a therapist, not a friend. Testing boundaries. If you accept too much too soon, they know you're easy to control. Signs you're dealing with an oversharer. They share trauma stories in the first conversation. You feel emotionally drained after talking. They use phrases like, "I've never told anyone this before," but they barely know you. The Stoic mindset here? Self-control is strength. If someone can't control their own emotional floodgates, they may lack the stability needed for a healthy connection. How do you handle this? 1. Don't reward oversharing with equal vulnerability. You don't owe them your secrets. 2. Gently redirect. That sounds really personal. Are you okay talking about this so soon? 3. Watch their reaction. A manipulator will push harder. A healthy person will respect your boundary. True intimacy takes time. When it's rushed, it's often manufactured. Remember, real trust is a slow build, not a force flood. Next up, the deflector, the person who never answers your questions directly. A master of misdirection. The deflector, when answers hide behind questions. Have you ever asked someone a direct question, and instead of answering, they throw another question back at you? Or worse, they change the topic completely? That's the art of deflection, a subtle, psychological red flag that often hides secrets or guilt. It sounds like this. You ask, "Where were you last night?" They reply, "Why do you always assume the worst?" Notice what happened. Your question vanished, and now you're defending yourself. This is not conversation. It's control through misdirection. Why do people deflect? To avoid accountability, to manipulate the narrative, making you feel unreasonable for even asking. To maintain power, because unanswered questions keep you in confusion. Epictetus, a Stoic philosopher, warned us about this indirectly when he said, "If someone is evasive, let their words be their own condemnation." Deflection is common in toxic relationships, business negotiations, and even casual friendships. If someone can't answer a simple question without dodging, it signals one of two things. They don't trust you enough to be honest, or they're hiding something important. Here's how to spot it. They respond with questions instead of answers. They shift blame onto you. "Why are you being so controlling?" They give vague answers that mean nothing. "Oh, I was just out." How do you handle it? Stay calm and persistent. Repeat the question without adding emotion. "I understand, but where were you?" Don't take the bait. If they make it about you, don't defend yourself. Return to the original question. Notice patterns. One-time deflection could be nerves. Consistent deflection? That's character. As the Stoics teach, don't argue with reality. If someone shows you they can't answer directly, believe what that reveals about their trustworthiness. Next up, the invalidator. The person who makes you doubt your own feelings by saying you're overreacting. The invalidator, making you doubt your reality. You share how something made you feel. Maybe you say, "That hurt me." And instead of empathy, they fire back. "You're too sensitive. You're overreacting. It's not a big deal. Why are you making it one?" This is invalidation, and it's one of the most damaging psychological red flags in conversation. It's subtle, but it erodes your confidence, your voice, and eventually, your sense of reality. Why do people invalidate? Control. If they can make you doubt your feelings, they can control the narrative. Avoidance. It saves them from taking responsibility. Superiority. They feel powerful by dismissing your emotions. The Stoic philosopher Seneca once said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." But the invalidator twists this truth. They use it to make you question if your feelings are even real. Here's how invalidation sounds. "Why are you so dramatic? That didn't happen the way you think. Stop making everything about you." At first, you might brush it off. But over time, it makes you second-guess yourself, even when you're right. You start asking, "Am I really too emotional? Am I the problem?" This is where Stoic wisdom can protect you. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Invalidators break both principles. They do what's wrong and speak what's untrue. How do you deal with it? 1. Recognize the pattern. If your feelings are always dismissed, this isn't about you, it's about them. 2. Use assertive language. "I understand you see it differently, but this is how I feel." 3. Walk away when necessary. Repeated invalidation is a sign of deep disrespect. Your feelings are real. They may not always be facts, but they are always signals. And a healthy person will respect your signals, even if they don't agree with them. This is the final red flag in our list. But before we wrap up, let's put it all together in a powerful conclusion that will leave the viewer with clarity and strength. See the red flags, save your peace. We've walked through the psychological traps hidden in everyday conversations, the manipulative compliments, the guilt-tripping words, the constant interruptions and one-upmanship, the passive-aggressive remarks, the silent treatment, the blame-shifting game, the intellectual domination, the chronic victim act, the deflection tactics, the invalidation that makes you doubt your own feelings. Each of these red flags has one thing in common. They steal your clarity and control. They're designed, consciously or unconsciously, to make you question yourself so the other person can hold power. But here's what the Stoics teach us, and what I want you to remember. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Marcus Aurelius, you can't always change how others behave. But you can recognize patterns, protect your boundaries, and decide who gets access to your peace. If you start spotting these red flags, don't ignore them. Don't explain them away. Don't fall into the trap of thinking, maybe it's just me. Because it's not. The truth is simple. Healthy conversations don't leave you feeling small. They leave you feeling seen. So here's my challenge to you. For the next 7 days, pay attention to your conversations. Listen for these red flags. When you notice one, pause and ask yourself, is this a pattern or a one-time slip? Am I explaining away disrespect? Do I feel smaller every time I talk to this person? If the answer is yes, it's time to step back, set boundaries, or step away completely. Because the cost of staying blind to these red flags, it's your peace, your confidence, and sometimes your entire sense of self. Before you go, if this video opened your eyes, do 2 things. Subscribe for more powerful mindset shifts. Share this video with someone who needs this right now, because we all deserve conversations that build us, not break us. And remember, strength is not in silence, it's in clarity. And clarity starts with awareness. Thank you for watching. Stay strong, stay aware, and I'll see you in the next one.